If I would have given the green light, they would have did something. And I wouldn't want nothing to happen to somebody just for saying somebody, on the scale from 1 to 10, it's a 0. It was an insult.
Big goes on. He's performing. All of a sudden, they start throwing coins at him. I'm like, yo, what the f is that about? Turn around, I'm like, oh, it's a gang of dudes with guns.
But that one slick comment had already spread like wildfire, and it landed in the wrong ears. So when Biggie hit the stage in Sacramento, he wasn't just performing, he was walking straight into the fallout of his own mouth. And those coins, that was just the warm-up.
11 at night.
Father, what you want me to do with this, man? Biggie, and what you want us to do with it?
What waited for him in that dark parking lot turned everything from confusion to all-out chaos. It wasn't just drama, it was full-blown panic. While Biggie was staring down the barrel of a real situation, E40's phone started blowing up.
In the day, I think it was 94, around 94, 95. Big had did an interview in a Canadian magazine. Like he was rating everybody on the scale to from 1 to 10.
Someone was calling with a question that could flip the whole script, and it was already 11 p.m. But this wild night didn't just drop out of nowhere. It had been brewing for months. And it all traced back to what looked like a harmless little magazine interview way up in Canada. Late 1994, Biggie was untouchable. His album, Ready to Die, had New York calling him the king. He was that guy. With the crown came the spotlight. That meant interview requests from every direction. One of them came from World Peace magazine, a small-time Canadian outlet covering hip-hop. They landed a sit-down with Biggie right when everyone was fighting to get close to him. The idea sounded chill, just rate some other rappers from 1 to 10. But this is where it got messy. Big was sipping heavy through the whole interview, and when that liquor kicks in, the filter between your head and your lips disappears real fast. He ran through a bunch of names, giving scores and quick takes. Then they asked about Tupac. And even though things between them were already getting shaky, Biggie tried to keep it cool. He praised Pac's talent, but didn't hold back on the critiques either. When it came to production, Biggie gave Snoop Dogg a clean 8 out of 10. Solid respect for what Death Row was putting out. But as soon as they asked about Bay Area rappers, Biggie's whole vibe shifted.
It was you and Spice 1. He gave Spice 1 a 2 and gave you a 0.
A 0, bruh. Yeah. You feel me? Even if I didn't like him, I wouldn't give him a 0.
Like a 3 or something.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, 3. Give me very long. It came to rating me, and from a scale from 1 to 10, you know what that man gave me?
0.
A 0, bro. A 0, and I'm a platinum artist at the time.
Whether it was the liquor talking, that deep East Coast pride, or just plain ignorance, something had him completely missing what these Bay legends meant to their people.
Youngins, my little young hyenas, they so sneaky. I didn't even know on everything. I didn't even know dude had a concert in Sacramento.
Then came the numbers, and they stung. Spice 1, he got a measly 2. But E40, Biggie hit him with a 0. And it didn't stop at the rating. Nah. Big went all in on the disrespect. Drunk and unfiltered, Biggie went from giving scores to tearing reputations down. That 0, it wasn't just shady. It was like saying E40 didn't even exist in the game. A platinum-selling artist who had been holding down the Bay since the late 80s. Completely erased with one number. But the worst part was what came out his mouth next. When asked about Spice 1, Biggie said, Spice 1 is a 2. E40 is a 0. I hate that dude. What? Hate? For real? You never even met the man. And yet, I hate that dude was the line that crossed every line. It jumped out of that Canadian magazine and went straight to the blocks in California where folks didn't take that kind of talk lightly. That sounded like a shot fired.
We're in Sacramento to do a show. We get there, it's like a warehouse. And we don't see too many cars. We don't see, it's a little weird. So we're like, well, I guess the crowd is like.
E40 wasn't just some rapper trying to get on. By 95, Earl Stevens had built a movement in Northern Cali. He created his own lane with a style nobody could touch. His slang, it changed how the whole West Coast talked. And his business game, legendary. He showed other independent artists how to stack money without selling out to big labels. E40 wasn't just respected in the studio. His street ties ran deep, from Sacramento all the way through the Bay. And the people around him?
DJ playing. And we're still looking around, we're like, it's not a lot of people here. It's maybe 10, 15 people at the most.
They weren't just friends or fans. They were family. Anyone coming for E40 was coming for all of them. And they took that personally. This wasn't about hurt feelings over a bad rating. And it definitely wasn't industry beef over who's hot on the charts. These were real ones, people with serious street backgrounds, who live by a code. And in that world, public disrespect didn't just slide. It demanded action. They weren't throwing Twitter shade. These folks had firepower, tight connections all over Northern Cali, and the patience to wait for the perfect moment. So when Biggie's comments made their way through the underground word-of-mouth grapevine, crossing cities and coastlines, it didn't get ignored. Nah, it got noted.
The Biggie Smalls concert, it was a Lil Bruce concert, so let's get that straight. The motherfucker was packed, so say it was empty. I don't know what you're talking about.
They started plotting a real-world lesson for Big, something that would show him what happens when you talk reckless about people you've never even met. And guess what? Fate lined it up on a silver platter. A few months after that wild interview up in Canada, Biggie landed a gig in Sacramento. For him and his team, it was just another night, another stage, another crowd, another bag.
I rocked the mother so long that these had to pull the plug on me. Yeah. Get off stage. Biggie Smalls got to get on stage. Who is that? We don't even know who the he is, really.
They didn't know that this wasn't just a booking. It was a setup that had been cooking for months. From the jump, the whole vibe was off. The venue, wrong on every level. Not a real concert hall, not even a legit club for big-name artists. They were walking blind into a trap. No clue that the streets had already circled the date on their calendar, waiting to show Big what time it really was. Biggie was used to sold-out crowds and loud energy, but this felt off. The spot they rolled up to wasn't a normal venue at all. It looked more like a warehouse with a sketchy, half-empty parking lot. Inside, maybe 15 people scattered across a giant space that echoed like a ghost town. For someone with Biggie's star power, it screamed setup.
So Big goes on. He's performing. All of a sudden, they start throwing coins at him. I'm like, yo, what's that?
Larry Burns, Biggie's seasoned manager, had been around the block. He'd organized shows all over the country. He could read a crowd, sense the vibe, and spot red flags fast. But even with all that experience, nothing prepared him for this. They weren't walking into a show. They were walking into something way more dangerous. What they didn't know was the real reason this event was happening. It wasn't Biggie's night. It never was.
Pac or whatever, I done heard the name in the magazine or whatever, talking about Pac, 40.
The spotlight had actually belonged to Little Bruce, E40's cousin and a respected voice in the Sacramento hip-hop scene. He wasn't just a random opener. He had his own crowd, his own people, and his own reason to make sure Biggie got checked for the things he said. When Little Bruce hit the stage, the place was lit, packed wall to wall with his supporters. But by the time Biggie stepped up, most of that crowd had cleared out, intentionally. Only the ones with business to handle stayed behind.
All of a sudden, you start hearing the trunks of cars opening. Just hearing boom, 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 boom. Like, what the hell is? We head out, get to the back. The limousine is there.
These weren't fans. They were folks who'd been sitting on that anger since the magazine interview dropped. They had come with a message, and tonight was the night to send it. Even with the cold vibe and strange silence, Biggie still took the stage. But the air, it was thick with tension. You could feel the hostility hanging heavy. This wasn't just about music anymore. Biggie hit the stage like a pro, cool, collected, and sharp. No matter the setting, he always brought that same fire that made him one of the most respected names in the game. He'd rock tiny clubs and massive arenas, so a weird venue or a half-dead crowd wasn't about to shake him. But what happened that night? It went way beyond a cold crowd.
Turn around, I'm like, oh, it's a gang of dudes with guns.
50 on me, that Desert Eagle, you know what I'm saying? Talking about my people's ain't for play out here.
Suddenly, coins started flying at the stage. This wasn't random shade or some bored fans acting out. Nah, this was something personal. In show culture, tossing coins at an artist is straight up disrespect. It's like calling a platinum rapper a street performer begging for change. It's meant to shame, to strip away dignity right there under the lights. Each coin that clinked on the stage came with a message. You don't belong here. Your music don't matter, and you disrespected the wrong ones. It wasn't just heckling. It was a calculated move to crush Biggie's pride and send a clear threat without saying a word.
Jail in this motherfucking nigga. And at the same time, I got two caters behind me, right?
The few folks still in the room weren't fans. They were witnesses. They came to see him humbled. But Big stayed locked in, pushing through every verse while ducking coins and catching glares like darts. He thought, this has to be the low point. He'd performed in rough spots before. He'd seen unfriendly crowds and tough venues. He figured he'd already faced the worst of it. But what was waiting outside? That was a whole different story. The real setup, the one they'd been planning for months, wasn't over yet. The parking lot was where the real heat was waiting, and Biggie had no clue what he was walking into next. That's when it really kicked off. After powering through his set in front of a cold, aggressive crowd, Biggie and his crew headed toward their limo, ready to bounce out of Sacramento's weird energy. They figured the coins and the stares were the worst of it. Just another rough night in the game. But they couldn't have been more wrong.
The limo door was open, so I was able to put Big in there. They come up and they just very irate.
When they reached the lot, no limo. Their driver was gone. And this wasn't no last-minute mix-up or innocent mistake. This move was intentional. Somebody had given direct orders for the ride to vanish, leaving Big and his team stranded in the dark, right where they were supposed to be. This wasn't random anger bubbling up. This was a setup, cold and calculated.
That was some bullshit the man said in the newspaper. He did the article about my man. We getting ready to get him.
Then came the moment Larry Burns would never forget, the chilling sound that echoed through the parking lot like a war drum. Car trunks popping open in perfect sync, one after the other. That sound told the whole story. This was organized. Vehicles had been parked with purpose, bodies sitting inside, just waiting for the green light. And now, it was go time. What came out of those trunks wasn't just a few pistols. These weren't small-time threats. These dudes rolled out with serious weapons, gear that looked straight out of a battle zone. This wasn't just some heat-of-the-moment flex. This was a mission, and they came ready to handle business. Then little Bruce stepped forward. He wasn't sending messages with words. He let his weapon speak loud and clear.
You know what? Get that man on the phone. I think that man and Big need.
The type of piece he pulled out told everybody watching. This wasn't for show. This was real. And Biggie's words had finally brought him face to face with the fallout. Little Bruce wasn't playing around. He pulled out a Desert Eagle .50 caliber, one of the most feared heavy-hitting weapons on the streets. This wasn't for show. This wasn't about scaring Biggie into an apology. This was execution-level serious. Bruce came ready to end it right there, and he wanted Biggie to know exactly why he was in that deadly situation and who made it happen. The threat was loud, direct, and very real. And Bruce wasn't alone out there. He had a whole squad, multiple associates, all armed, all locked in, and all ready to squeeze if things went sideways.
Be like 11 at night.
Father, what you want me to do with this, man? I got this Biggie, and what you want us to do, man?
This wasn't some hot-headed solo act. It was a coordinated hit backed by months of planning and cold strategy. These weren't random shooters. They were a crew with a mission and a reason. Larry Burns somehow managed to get Biggie into the limo, but they were boxed in tight. No way out. The confrontation had arrived, and it came packed with rage that had been simmering since that interview hit the streets. And their message? Blunt and crystal clear. We can get him right now. This wasn't about robbing a superstar. It wasn't over turf or label beef. There was no hidden business angle or cash grab in play. This whole thing was about those 4 words. Biggie rating E40 a 0 and saying, "I hate that dude." That comment turned into a death sentence in the eyes of these men, and they had no plans to let it slide. In their world, public disrespect like that demanded blood. And now, in a silent Sacramento parking lot, surrounded by serious firepower and with no help in sight, Biggie was finally feeling the weight of what he'd said months ago while drunk, thinking it was just another harmless magazine interview. Out there in that dark parking lot, Biggie's fame meant nothing. All those platinum plaques, useless. His legendary bars and status as one of the best to ever touch a mic, irrelevant. These weren't fans. They were street men who lived by a different code. Respect wasn't earned through record sales. It came through loyalty, power, and how you handled yourself when things got real.
I mean, he put me on the phone, say, man, what's happening? What was up with that, situation?
And in that moment, surrounded by heat and hate, Larry Burns made a move that might have saved hip-hop from losing one of its greatest voices. It was a gamble, born out of instinct, survival, and pure street smarts. Burns realized this wasn't really about a group of angry guys, it was about principles. This was Biggie versus E40, and maybe, just maybe, E40 himself would see things differently than the ones ready to pull triggers. So Burns made the call, an appeal to the bigger picture, and it landed. E40's crew respected structure. They weren't wild cards, they were disciplined enough to understand the chain of command. If E40 hadn't given the word, then nobody had the right to act on their own, no matter how mad they were. So that phone rang at 11 p.m. And when E40 picked up, he wasn't just answering a call, he was answering fate. On the other end were his most loyal riders, ready to go all the way, ready to take a life over a magazine quote. E40 recalled it clearly. They called me like 11 at night. And he had a choice to make. The easy route, let it happen. Give the green light and let the streets handle it. Biggie had clowned him publicly, called his whole legacy trash, said he hated him. In the street-coded world that dominated hip-hop at the time, those words weren't just rude, they were fighting words. Words that came with consequences.
They got me real drunk, man, and I just got to saying anything, man, and what else he said? He said, man, Duke, he said, I with Sprinkle Me, Duke. I rock with Sprinkle Me, Duke.
Sometimes fatal ones. But E40 didn't go the obvious route. He didn't give the green light. Instead, he showed real wisdom, the kind that separates leaders from hotheads. Rather than letting things explode in violence, he made the choice to talk. He wanted to hear it straight from Biggie, man to man. And what happened next? It was rare and powerful. Two legends, face to face, no hype, no middlemen, no egos. Just a real convo that saved a life and stopped what could have gone down as one of the darkest moments in hip-hop history. Biggie didn't dodge it. He didn't point fingers at the interviewer or claim he was taken out of context. He stepped up and owned it. Straight up said he was drunk, admitted it was dumb, and called it what it was. Reckless talk that never should have left his lips. But he didn't stop there. Biggie actually gave props. He told E40 he respected what he brought to the game. Said, "Sprinkle me, Duke." That hit different. Sprinkle me was one of E40's signature lines. West Coast slang he'd helped pioneer. And Biggie using it wasn't just lip service. It showed he was paying attention and had real respect for the culture E40 had built. That 5-minute phone call, it changed everything. The weapons went down. The energy shifted. E40 could tell Big was being real, not just trying to save himself. He saw that there was no lasting beef, no personal grudge, just a stupid, alcohol-fueled moment that had spiraled way too far. In a world where one wrong word can turn deadly, two giants paused and chose peace. And that 5-minute call, it saved Biggie's life that night.
And I was like, ooh, I didn't trip. I was like, man, let him. I told him, I said, put my folks on the phone. Say, let him do his thing, man.
But E40 didn't just shut down the heat that night. He took it way further. He knew the streets in Sacramento had layers. There were others out there, dudes not directly under his wing, who might still want to come for Biggie. Whether it was for clout, personal beef, or just to prove a point, the danger wasn't over yet. E40 understood that in order to really protect Big, he had to think bigger. Just telling his crew to stand down wasn't enough. He had to make sure word spread that Biggie was off limits. that anyone thinking of taking a shot would be going against the man who ran the Bay with brains and respect. That's next-level leadership. He knew how the streets worked, how one act of violence could trigger a whole chain reaction.
I'm gonna have two of my boys escort y'all back to the hotel. And they're gonna stay there until y'all catch the plane in the morning. Because I don't know what any other knuckleheads is gonna do to you.
And if something happened to Biggie, it wouldn't stop there. E40 would have a target on his back in New York. One move could light up an all-out coastal conflict, ripping through careers, families, and lives. Nobody would win. Even little Bruce, who had been front and center with the heat, ready to go all in, stepped back when E40 laid it out. Bruce had the fire, but he also had the discipline. He understood chain of command. And when E40 explained the real reason behind sparing Biggie's life, Bruce listened, even if he didn't like it. That explanation showed just how sharp E40 was. He wasn't just trying to be the bigger man. He was protecting everybody. He saw the bigger picture. Violence might bring short-term respect, but it would blow up everything in the long run. And his people? They followed his word. Not just because he was the boss, but because they trusted his mind and knew he moved for the good of the whole community.
Hand me the phone for a second. He like, Lil Bruce. 40 tell me like this, cause 40 tell me like this. He like, Lil Bruce, I be in New York, and I be by myself. So if you smack, somebody gonna turn around, smack me, basically. So I was like this, all right, cuz I'm gonna get this, and I fell in line with the whole situation. And you know what I'm saying, Biggie Smalls rode away with his lot.
In a world fueled by ego and revenge, that kind of control, rare and powerful. That night in Sacramento, Biggie didn't lose his life, but he did lose something just as heavy. His pride, his sense of being untouchable, that belief that fame and status could shield him from real-life consequences, gone. He stepped into that warehouse as the king of New York, untouchable, unstoppable. But he walked out humbled, a man who had to beg for his life through a phone, saved only by the grace of someone he'd straight up disrespected in public. That moment changed everything. It became the night Biggie learned a hard truth. When you diss the wrong people, especially in a place where respect is everything, you don't just risk your reputation, you risk everything. In that parking lot, surrounded by firepower and fury, he came face to face with the true cost of running his mouth. The message, loud and clear. Words matter. Respect isn't owed, it's earned. And sometimes the price of ignorance isn't paid in dollars or chart positions, but in fear, shame, and the haunting memory that your life hung in the balance. All because your enemy chose wisdom over revenge. If you felt this story, make sure to drop a comment, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't miss what's coming next. See you on the next one.